And thank all of you just for being here, and especially thanks to Jeff for giving me a chance once again to be a meaningful part in this struggle. As everybody here knows, we're here because we want to express our ongoing outrage at the way the judicial and penal systems of this country treat people who dare to speak out for a new and better world, a more just world. We're here to express our solidarity with those who have been unjustly imprisoned by the system and to pledge to continue seeking their freedom. And we are here especially to welcome attorney Lynne Stewart, who spent horrendous years in prison as payback for having successfully defended many of the people whom the system tried to crush in an attempt to scare off other attorneys from defending the unjustly accused and unjustly imprisoned, people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, whose freedom we are also here to demand, and people like the Cuban Five. When Jeff Mackler asked me over a month ago, because he knows this takes time to get a message from Cuba, the obvious people to ask were the Cuban Five. And I do have a message from them. It took a little while. He knew enough to ask ahead of time because although 2 of them are now back home in Cuba, the other 3 are scattered in prisons around the country. And as anyone, as most of you do, know anything about the prison system, it takes a while for a message to go around from prison to prison and have everybody sign on to it, make whatever changes or additions they want to make to it. Before I read their message, are there people here who don't know or don't know very much about who the Cuban Five are? Okay. This will be brief, but I'm going to give you websites afterwards that you can look up more. Brief because most people do know. Most of you know that the United States has tried to annihilate the Cuban Revolution since its inception by economic boycotts and outright military and terrorist attacks. Those attempts have been as violent and murderous as the ways that our government and the corporate economy it represents attempt to control the rest of the world. The Cuban people have suffered thousands of deaths, billions of dollars in economic damage as a result of the ongoing terrorist attacks taken against their country. So it's not surprising that the Cuban revolutionary government regularly sends people to infiltrate some of the Miami-based terrorist organizations to learn about and try to help prevent the worst actions. The Cuban Five are some of those anti-terrorist fighters who, while trying to protect the people of their country, were captured, tried, and imprisoned in Miami, where there wasn't the slightest chance of their getting a fair trial. 2 of the 5 have already returned to Cuba after serving their unjust 12 and 15-year sentences, but the others may spend many more years, their entire lives, in the United States, in U.S. prisons, like Lynne would have, and like Mumia and Leonard Peltier, for example, will, unless our support wins their freedom. It's a long and complicated case, and I can't go into it all here, but I urge those of you who raised your hands who didn't know about them before to look on the Free the Five websites to learn more and find out how you can help. You could also read an excellent article by the late, great People's Attorney Leonard Weinglass, who was one of their attorneys and a proud member of the National Lawyers Guild, one of the co-sponsors of this event. An article of his that appeared in ZNet, and again, people can see me afterwards, I can give you, websites, and a very current speech by their appeals attorney, Martin Garbus, at a London People's Tribunal that you can also find on the internet. I'm telling you about the Cuban Five so that you'll better appreciate the significance of a letter they just sent to Lynne and Mumia and all the people who support them. As I said, it took a while to get this letter once it was drafted because it had to make its slow way from the island of Cuba through the various prisons where the remaining 3 are being held. And this is From Cuba, with love. Dear friends of Mumia Abu Jamal and Lynne Stewart, something is wrong with a society where people like Mumia and Lynne are subject to imprisonment. It is even worse when the prosecutors and representatives of that society have to resort to the meanest behavior to deprive them of the basic right to liberty, and when jurors and judges have to turn their backs to the very laws and principles they were sworn to uphold in order to perpetuate that injustice. Such is the case of every defender of a just cause who has fallen in the hands of the American system of injustice, from John Brown to our days. Having suffered the impact of such a system, the five of us can attest to how low a prosecutor can fall when trying to subjugate a defendant. We can also attest to how vindictive they can become when their abuse of power is fruitless and the spirit of the intended victim rises above their heads to remind them of their own poor human worth. Better then to be prepared to deal with all the personal hatred a pack of cowards with lots of power can unleash on a single human being. Lynne and Mumia were well prepared to endure the hatred that fell on them. Their dedication to justice made them much better human beings than their captors. Their social sensibility enriched their intellect far above that of their persecutors. Their continuous struggle gave them the courage that will never enhance the character of their tormentors. They have endured the cruelest experience, but from the depth of their incarceration, they have shined and given us all a lesson on greatness that speaks volumes of the worth of the human spirit. That's why we have come to welcome the return of Lynne Stewart to the society whose representatives put her in prison. That's why we have to keep fighting to see Mumia Abu Jamal return to that society. They not only deserve such a basic human justice, the society which they belong to needs people like them to remind us that only by defending the highest values will humankind conquer the realization of the finest dreams, which will one day make us an intelligent species. In the name of the Cuban Five and the proud Cuban people, to Lynne and to Mumia, our greatest admiration and respect. Signed, Gerardo Hernandez Nordelo, Ramon Labañino Salazar, Antonio Guerrero Rodriguez, Fernando González Yort, and René González Seweret.